and welcome to WealthiHer's Female Financial View podcast, your monthly insight into the topics and trends that are relevant to women trying to navigate the world of finance. So you don't miss future episodes, be sure to hit the follow button on whichever streaming platform you're listening on, or by following hashtag QC Female Financial View on LinkedIn. I'm your host, Vanessa Eve, investment manager based in our Leeds office. And this month, I am pleased to be joined by Tamara Gillan, founder and CEO of WealthiHer. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, I think we really need to start, for those that aren't familiar with the WealthiHer Network, exactly what it is and what was the catalyst and foundation for you starting it in the first place.
So WealthiHer was started with a really simple mission, which was how do we empower, how do we educate women so that they advance, with a particular focus on prosperity, financial prosperity, and broader life prosperity as it relates to sort of financial independence or achieving things that are intrinsically related to a woman's life. And that story was very much co-created with our partners, such as WealthiHer. We said, how do we do this together? Because in fact, if we stand together as an industry, if we work in partnership, we can do so much more on this mission. But in terms of my personal story that led me here, my mother comes from a family of 8, but she's got 6 sisters. Really strong female empowerment sort of gene. They are authors, writers, teachers, artists. And so I was always going to do female empowerment as my sort of cause in life. I came to London with a book called Faith Popcorn, How to Market to Women. And it was going to be, I was going to create a marketing agency for women. And I started a marketing agency, and I worked on things like getting young women playing sport and the London 2012 and creating a legacy after the Olympics in sport, as well as big global sort of partnership programs. And so female empowerment was always there. And my father was an entrepreneur. And he always taught me that, in fact, you needed access to finance to grow your business. You needed to be savvy. And I was really fortunate that he took me on the journey. I went to meet my banking and finance partners when I was growing up, so with my dad. So I was always a lot more comfortable. But one of the things I found that was in my personal life, I just wasn't comfortable. I didn't want to be more successful financially than a man. I didn't protect myself going into a marriage and a divorce. I was quite vulnerable when I got divorced. I hadn't sort of prepared myself. And so I thought, actually, I'm going to make this a two-sided mission to sort of take all of those influences, but really do something that arms and equip women so that they have the confidence, the knowledge, the right advice. So when they are facing moments in their life, whether it's personal, whether it's just preparing yourself in a relationship to have those kind of complex conversations, or when things go wrong, as well as in business, we are going to get behind those women and ensure that they have that access.
And I think you're absolutely right. And my goodness, what a household to be growing up in. I feel sorry. I feel sorry for the father in that equation, because my goodness, that would be quite something to be in a household like that. But I think, you are incredibly lucky in the sense that your father did expose you to that from a young age, because I think there is almost a reliance on parents to do all of the financial education. It isn't really picked up in schools as much as it should be. And there is almost an expectation that everyone, not just women, should understand and know this going out into the wide world. So I think collaboration, as you've already said, and the collaborative work that WealthiHer have done with the WealthiHer Network is absolutely pivotal to that. I suppose it'd be useful for you to go through, how do you go about delivering on that mission, on your personal mission? Because you've sort of highlighted already, there are so many different things intertwined with empowering women just about the financial aspects, because it does cover so much that is personal to them.
Yeah, I think as I said, partnership is the core and collaboration is the core to how we enable that mission. Working with staunch partners such as yourselves, such as WealthiHer, and actually going where women are to deliver education, advice, helping women to learn from each other. We're going up and down the country with you and your team. One moment we're in London, the next we're in Manchester coming up. So I think that actually going where the women are, but doing it in a way that women want to engage and learn, which is being inspired, getting the right advice, and then talking around the commentary of what that means in the context of their lives and themselves and how they actually put that into practice. So that's a big key part of how we do it. As we know, the research is so important. We've been researching since 2019. What are the needs of women? How have they shifted? What do they want? What are they, where are their gaps? And there are big gaps, the investment gap, the funding gap. And what are the blockers to women investing more or, putting more in their pension or protecting themselves more in relationships? And we really understand those, and we take those into our partners such as yourselves and we say, what do we do differently? What do we do differently to take on that barrier and overcome it so that we can really set women up for prosperity? And then, in fact, women are busy. How do we give them the tools that reflect the busy lives of women and our multiple selves? Women are doing a lot more of the care and responsibility, whether it's children, family, elderly parents. So how do we take information to them in a way that they want to receive it and engage? We just launched the membership, which has got a digital academy. So inspiring her stories of women who, tackled that problem, and then actually advice from people such as yourselves. How do we put it into action with bite-sized things that you can take away so women can take on some of that in their own time?
And I think that's really relevant because let's face it, we all see people wandering around with their earphones in. So podcasts such as these allow women to access information while they're on the go, because I know with a 7-year-old at home, it is a big juggling act that we need to undertake. So I think, yes, reaching out to women, making those conversations easier are extremely important things that we need to consider when creating such important content as understanding of finances and wealth. And I suppose what we've found in the research that we've undertaken with our own female client survey is actually women do approach wealth in a very different way. So in terms of your reports, which I always find fascinating, I'm always reading them every year that they come out. When it does come to wealth, how do you think women define wealth and define this for themselves personally?
One of the things that we've seen since we started researching, although it has shifted, is that for women, it is inextricably linked to the things that really matter to them personally. So it's about things like freedom and comfort for myself. Freedom is financial independence, and freedom has performed. It's dropped down in the cost of living crisis, but that sort of freedom, being able to provide comfort, security for my loved ones, and giving me, the opportunity to have more balance or invest in the things that sort of will make a difference to my later life, other things that really matter to women. Whereas for men, we've seen more things such as actually financial success in and of itself is a goal. I've achieved that, therefore, in terms of financial outcome. Men talk more about actually being able to provide for my family. That comes up more strongly. So women are talking about this sort of more broader security, comfort. Men are being able to provide, and work-life balance, or being able to retire early. So that, those are some of the real consistencies. But we've seen that through this cost of living crisis, and we researched the big quantitative sort of piece at the end of last year, was actually it's this sort of it impacted the way women think about saving and investing. So women are saving less, investing slightly less. There's more of a defensive, I've got to protect myself and my family right now because we're facing these headwinds financially. So we saw that come into play. And that was a bit of a shift, that before it was a lot more about those sort of intrinsic points. And then this sort of cost of living, saving, impact, that sort of protecting my family became more pertinent at the end of last year.
And I think you're absolutely right, because obviously, and we've touched upon this in previous podcasts, the differential pay gap that exists between men and women in different sectors, because they do tend to go into very different sectors, actually does impact their capacity for saving. And therefore, there is a natural risk aversion when it comes to investing, not because women are naturally risk averse, but actually their capacity for loss, so what they're able to lose, isn't as much as men. So I think this is something that we really want to factor into the sorts of conversations that we as investment managers do have with women, because it is important to invest, but we have to appreciate that we need to take a slightly different approach when it does come to women. And I suppose you've touched upon, we are living in very challenging economic times. From the research that you have done, how are women most affected by this specifically?
One of the things that almost half of women feel that since the last piece, so a year later, that their financial position has worsened. So almost half of women say my financial position has worsened, and therefore, as you say, your propensity for loss increases. Women, 2/3 of women think life has become more stressful. One of the things that's really interesting is if you look at women under 28, it's become even more stressful than those for the general sort of women in general, which is actually because they've got that crunch of, some of them have got university debt, they're trying to get on the property market, on the ladder, or so they've got, increased rental increases. So they're feeling even more stressed and even more crunched financially. And in fact, going back to your point about different, understanding different needs of women, in fact, women's self-esteem or confidence is less than men. But in fact, you see that play out depending on your background. So if a woman has access to her wealth in partnership or marriage, she's actually got the lowest levels of confidence and financial confidence. And when you dig beneath that in interviews, you say, talk to me about that, let me understand. And it's, well, I don't think I can make it back. If I lost it, I can't make it back. It's not like I can just get another job or do something else. So that you can really see that coming into that kind of loss aversion, or what I can't afford to lose. And many are saying, I've got this wealth and I want to protect the futures of my children, and so I need to curate it so carefully and not put a foot wrong. So you see it playing out for different women in different, and of course that's not a universal truth. Women who've accessed the money by marriage, some are, ruling all of their investments, all for the family, the business. Yeah. But, you can definitely see that difference coming out. And you can see the impact on these on these challenging times. Women are historically really, really confident in cash ISAs, but in fact, and saving, but in fact, even savings taking a dent. Women are saying I'm saving less because of these challenging times.
And I mean, that doesn't even take into account the fact that inflation is at incredibly high levels. And, although it is coming down slowly, cash is not quite the safety net that everyone makes it out to be. Although the face value hasn't changed, actually the buying power of that cash is being eroded. And I think this, again, goes back to that sort of education piece, that we need to make sure that where individuals, irrespective of gender, make that choice to go into cash, that actually they are mindful of what inflation can do to that. And I mean, you have touched upon a number of really quite, I suppose, unsettling areas that women do face. How do you think women can seize control of their worth, both personally and financially? Because you have said that, women can feel very vulnerable, and there are vulnerabilities that women do seem to have more so than men. So how do you feel women can start to bring a bit more control and empowerment to that?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting as well, that vulnerability point, because I just touching on that before I say how, from some of our research is, we've had focus research groups, and we've had women say, I don't suffer from vulnerability and I'm confident in this area, I've sold my company. And in fact, sometimes when you dig again beneath the surface, actually they have the same vulnerability of someone else, because they've said, well, I've sold my company, I knew what to do with my company, and now I've got this money and I don't know this world. So I'm vulnerable, particularly in this changing market dynamics, as much as someone who's accessed it through a divorce. So this is a real thing for women, and all sorts of women, not all women, but it is a real thing for many women. And I've certainly felt it myself. But one of the things that I think is really hopeful that we've seen through the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, is because it's a health-driven crisis, because it's impacted our daily lives, energy prices. I've talked to people doing interviews with coming to the, in their hall, coming with a hat and a scarf because of the energy prices. It's impacted our daily lives, our family, our loved ones. 51% of women now say, I want to take control. I want to step forward. I want to get more information because this impacts me, it impacts my family, and I need to know. So, and that's up about 15%, which I see, as super hopeful. And the thing that does help, getting the right advice and talking to advisors such as yourself who really get them, who get their lives, who understand what they want to do, what the risks are for them, what the loss, that they might be facing in their kind of attitude, from their kind of attitudinal point of view. Plans, a plan really, really helps. But only 55% of women do not have a plan. People talk of shared financial plans. So, the number one, one of the kind of key success ingredients for a relationship is financial chemistry. Yet, if you talk to couples, how many of you have a shared financial plan? So women don't have a plan themselves, and they don't have a shared financial plan, yet you're trying to, decide everything for your family, where you go on holiday, what you do, when you, so actually those two things, I think, really set them free, is having a plan, not just one for yourself, but one for your kind of life and family. If you're in a family, could be your parents, but another is that kind of getting the right advice, asking questions.
And I think that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? It's beginning those conversations in the first place. It always astonishes me when I'm speaking with my clients and they almost feel like they should have an understanding of markets and how they work. And I have to almost stress to them that, I needed 4 years of qualifications to make sure that I understood the market. So this is not something that everybody should know. But if you start having those conversations, sharing with your partners, wider family, what your concerns are, what your hopes are for the future, actually that can be the foundations for moving forward. And I think we know certainly from Quilt Achieve its own research that because women are less confident when making investment decisions, they do tend to revert to what they know, such as cash and property. You've already alluded to the fact that women are actually quite diligent savers and are very good at things like cash ISAs. But why do you think there is this almost reversion to just cash and property? I mean, is it very much that familiarity piece?
Yeah, I think I've read a lot of books on this, a lot of research myself, and you see that actually a lot of people revert to what they know and what you grew up with. So I found, my family were property. My dad was a property guy. He invested in property, built property, and so that was my route as well, because it's that familiarity point. I understand property. We've also asked women, and it's very familiar. Like it's tangible. I get it. I see a building. I know that if I do this to the building, I add this, and then we sell it or we rent it, this is my return. So it's I get it. And same with saving, I get it. But the number one thing that really drives engagement with it is confidence in terms of those not more complex, but in the world of investing. So if you look at that world of everyday finance, women are really confident at that. They're very engaged. As I said, mortgages, ISAs, saving for their family, junior ISAs, very involved. But when it comes to long-term investing, they're less involved, they're less engaged, they do it less. And that only 30% of women feel confident in investing. So we really need to work to help women feel confident to invest, understand the parameters of that, get the right advice to help them to get that understanding. And the number one thing that drives that confidence, education. And done in female terms, understanding what it means, asking questions, and giving them that advice as it relates to their life and the things they want to achieve through that investment.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting when we have conversations with clients and when I'm talking to my clients who perhaps come from more of a property background, like you say, they understand it. It's a tangible physical object that you can go out and touch. But what I think, particularly in these uncertain times, is property doesn't necessarily give you flexibility. So I say to my clients, it's not as if you can chip off a bit of your chimney, sell that to be able to meet unforeseen situations that will crop up, whereas investing can give you that flexibility. And indeed, we have been able to tangibly demonstrate that investing is a great way to overcome some of the gaps that you've mentioned previously. So from your own research, what do women want to see out of their investments?
It goes back to that, those life goals. So for some, it's, I want to shore up my own, my daily life, actually, security, comfort, freedom, absolutely run through that and being able to do things with that. And education. So education, women want to be able to educate their children or provide for their care, and that features very, very strongly. A woman will invest in her child's education before she'll put money in her pension. And I certainly feel as a parent, my number one priority is not my long-term future. It's including that kind of nurture and education of my son comes first, and that comes second. And that's a very, female thing. I'll look after everybody else and then I'll look after me. And we do see that gap playing out in the pension gap for women. It's closing for younger women. Legislation's changed that. But in fact, that is still something we need to secure women's longer term futures. And we're also getting that double impact of care for elderly parents. So that kind of financial care and burden. So planning for all of these, I think, is really, really key. And it's a different type of planning than anything we saw in our parents' generation. It's different for us, and it's changing. So again, just going back to those things that women want to see, is around those things that are about themselves, their loved ones. Women are absolutely, which I love to see, really, when they are investing, they want to invest in socially responsible, sustainable businesses. They're doubling down on anything that's negative, things like I think in response to macro environments, anything that's seen to be involved in arms, weapons, exploitation, animal testing, human rights abusing. That's doubled in the last year. So women are saying, absolutely not. I will not do things that are, having this sort of wider negative impact on the world. And you really see that women want to align to investments to their own values and with organizations that respect those values. So I think that is, women offer great hope in that. If we can get women investing, we help everybody in terms of their loved ones and families, but we also help the wider world and society.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is what we've seen. I mean, Quilter Cheviot have our own socially responsible investing team that analyze exactly these types of areas, look at all the sorts of investments that we make, and actually are able to highlight areas of either concern or positivity. And that's helping inform all of our clients, not just women, about actually, if you do want to make a positive difference, there are means in which you can invest to instigate wider change globally. And certainly in the conversations that I have with clients, that element, the ethical, social and governance areas, environmental areas as well, it very much is driven by the female parties in relationships, and it's definitely questions I get more from women than necessarily men. And I suppose it's those positive changes that we can see coming about, not only from women wanting to get more financial education, but also wanting to make meaningful investments that can change the world. I suppose we really want to sort of have a look and reflect on 2023, what's happened there. What do you hope to see change in your next research findings? And I suppose look to a more positive future, because things are changing, albeit slowly, but changing for the better.
I mean, I think would love to see that continued trend of more women seizing control, more women getting actively involved, looking at the world of investing. Because as you say, going back to your point on property, you can't chip off your chimney, but it's an incredibly hard time to be a landlord as well. And it doesn't give you flexibility, and there's more investment required to keep everything going in the current world. So I think that taking control, using our voice and our influence, because as you say, we have the ability, if we make the right investment choices, engage with the right businesses, we have the power. 60% of the UK's wealth will be in the hands of women by 2025, making decisions. We have the power to change things. I have a small, tiny story which makes me so happy, in that Mattel and Barbie, off the success of the female empowerment movie that is Barbie, have just announced that they will be plastic free. Barbie will be plastic free by 2023 in response to this sort of, environmental push, which is just, shows the power of our positive voice. And we have that power in the investment choices we make, from our pension to investment products. And it's great that we have people like you and your teams helping them to make those choices and understand the benefit of those choices. I want to continue to see the pension gap continue to close for all women, not just those, it's not too late to start. Even if you chose child's education like me, start thinking about that pension, because life is long and women are living nearly 10% longer than men, depending where you look at the global study. The leadership gap, we know that in fact there is a leadership gap. Only 9 of the FTSE 100 CEOs are women. We just lost a good one. There is that we need to continue to change that. And there still are perception gaps of women's propensity to lead. So we need to continue to challenge that. The investment gap, want to see that actively change, do not want to see this financial blip that we're having in the sort of broader context to sort of drag us backwards on progress of women getting investing. And continue to, we know that, as I said, this financial confidence and the role of education within that unlocks women stepping forward, taking control. So we need to continue to fuel that together through the power of partnership, by going where women are, giving them information like through this podcast, and more people doing it. Because if we all stand together, we can have, which we do and we can really change things en masse.
And I have to say, every time I speak with you, work with you, Tamara, you're an absolute inspiration. And I think the work that you're doing at the moment on female entrepreneurs is just remarkable. And I think, yes, we do have a lot of power when working together and spreading those messages out to the wider community and really getting women feeling that confidence to go out there and seize control of not only their finances, but their own lives and the direction of travel that they can take moving forward. I suppose, in a way, to kind of sum up, because we've covered a lot in a very short space of time, what would be your calls to action for the women listening today in terms of next steps, small steps that they can take that potentially can make a really big difference in their lives?
One is a more personal and the others are more steps. But one is, I think, really knowing your worth and protecting your worth, I think, is really important. And that goes from whether you are in a pay negotiation, or you're asking for a pay rise, or you're holding the line on your value, because I think then you have more to invest, you have more choices. So I think that is really important in terms of that worth conversation. Or, I went into marriage later in life. I had assets. I was only married for a very short time. I lost some of those assets to that marriage. In fact, going in and saying, I love you, you love me, but let's be sensible, let's protect individual assets that we come in with. And that's a hard conversation, but that's just protecting my worth. And it's fair and it's logical, and it's hard when it's emotional. But I think that holding our worth through the different lenses of our life and thinking of ourselves within that context versus the other people first, I think, is my one big piece of advice. I think getting advice and asking questions. I have been so fortunate to be surrounded by people like yourself, Vanessa. I can ask you any question and you will tell me in simple steps. Sometimes I make you draw a diagram of what it means. I am by no means, I am a financial nightmare. I really have only just started my journey through the WealthiHer experience. I've been doing complicated fundraising, and again for WealthiHer, and I've been like, I don't even understand. I have to ask a question, but ask questions, ask it of those people that know. Ask any question. There is no silly question. And also start talking to others about it, men, women, because in fact we can learn from each other. And I think that have a plan, because it improves confidence. It reduces stress, because you know what you're doing and how you're doing it. So get a plan, and the plan will change. But if you have a plan and you are taking conscious steps to manage those possibilities, because it is really about yourself and your life and your loved ones, that plan will help you achieve those things.
And it goes back to that whole well-being aspect of things. If you have a plan, you know the direction of travel, things can always change and you can always pivot. And yes, I completely agree with you. I am always an advocate for questions, because let's face it, anyone that asks a question, there are usually 2 or 3 people in that same room that want to ask exactly the same question, but are fearful of looking silly or thinking that other people know more than them. And so, no, I absolutely agree with that. And thank you for your kind comments, because it has been an absolute pleasure working with you. And I've learned so much from you in terms of what the WealthiHer Network do. And, I'm absolutely a support and advocate for the mission. So all I can say is, Tamara, thank you so much for those great insights. And hopefully everyone listening today can take inspiration from everything that you've covered. That I certainly have, and say we really hope that you have enjoyed the discussion that we've had on the podcast today. We'd love to hear from our listeners any feedback you may have. So please do review the show now wherever you're listening, and share it on your socials. We want to send these messages out there. So being able to tag us at Quilt Achieve It is an incredibly important feature. And also, please let us know what we should be covering. It's really important for us to understand what you, our listeners, would like for us to cover. So if there are topics within the world of finance that you want to understand more about, please do get in touch and let us know. And to make sure you don't miss a future episode, please do tap the subscribe button. And in the meantime, going back to education and knowing more about finances, please do head over to our website at www.quiltachieveit.com, where you can visit our Women in Investing Hub for our latest news, industry insights, and upcoming events and webinars. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.